Hey everyone, welcome back. This is part 11 of this series, and in this one we're going to be looking at implementing the data space schema that we created in our Lucid chart and implementing that in Bubble, and also implementing the privacy rules. So as we covered previously, your data schema should always be either your starting point or the second point if you start with a piece of paper, but Bubble should always be your last point. And as we go through this, you'll realise how much easier it is to start off at this point where you can see a graphical representation of your schemas and how you've already thought things through and thought the relationship through, and therefore implementing that in Bubble is a lot easier than if you're actually trying to determine that with Bubble's data tab in front of you. So we're going to start by implementing these top level data types, our subscription, organization and user, and also our privacy rules for those. So let's start with subscription, or what I originally called SaaS account. Okay, sorry, we were going to call it subscription, weren't we? Okay, to make it a little bit easier. Now notice you've got this, make this data type private by default. And what's going to happen with that is just going to implement a default privacy rule on the data type. So I don't really like to do that. We can define our own in a moment. So we'll just create that. And let's have a look. We have name, trial, expiry date and admins. So name is going to be a text. Okay, and our trial is going to be a yes, no. And our expiry date is going to be a date, and our admins is going to be a list of users. So we're going to select user and then tick this field is a list. Okay, so that we then have a list of the users who have access to admin level functionality. Okay, and then the next one is SAS Plan. Which plan are they on? So we're going to need our SAS Plan option set for that. And your option set is called SAS Plan. Create that, and we have three options, which is Starter, Standard and Premium. Okay, and then we can go back and we can add our SAS Plan field. Okay, and now we can look at our organization, which is minute is just name, subscription and users. So organization, okay, is name, which is just a text. And we have to hook that up to a subscription. An organization has to belong to a subscription, as we covered previously. And then we've got a list of users, which is a list of users who belong to that subscription but who have access to this organization. If the user wants to deny some users who belong to that subscription, but you don't want to have access to this particular organization. Okay, and the next one is users. So obviously that's already there for us, but we do have a first name, last name, email, subscription, and we'll put the subscription in first. So we'll add a field. Okay, and we will add a first name and a last name. Okay, and then we've got our email's already a built-in field, so then we've got our current org and our default org. So if you remember, we said that the current org will represent the organization that the current user is actively using right now, and that's how we can pivot our privacy rules to ensure that the user only sees the data for the organization that they're using at this moment in time. And then we have our default org, which is if the user chooses to have one, that it automatically selects when they log into the system, then they can have that. Okay, so those just are top level types, and what we need to do then is to implement our privacy rules on here. So let's start with the organization. Okay, we'll go into privacy and we'll define a new rule, and we will stick with the name of SAS Rule for that. Okay, and again, it's important, everyone else, the default permissions, we're going to set up a rule here. If this rule is not met, we do not want anybody else seeing that data. Okay, so we want to make sure that all of that is unticked. So if it doesn't meet this rule, nothing is shown. So then what we need to say then is that only include this organization if its subscription is the same as a current logged in user subscription. So we can say this organization's subscription is current users subscription. Okay, now obviously then we've got our users field, so we need to, so I've actually created that as a, that's actually wrong, I've created that as with the wrong type. That's my bad, apologies. Okay, that should be user, and that's going to be a list of users. You probably spotted that before I did. Back to privacy rules. Okay, so then what we can say is, and what we need to say then is this organization's users list contains the current user. So only if the current user's subscription is the same as an organization's subscription, and that the organization's list of access users contains the current users. Okay, so that will then exclude from seeing an organization anybody that's not of the same subscription, and also any user within that subscription who doesn't have access to the organization. Now, one other way that you could do this is in terms of like the organization's users. Okay, because if you imagine by default then you've got to add every single user who might have access to that organization into that users list. Another way you could do it is to have that as a non-access users field, if you like. So in other words, any user that's contained within that list doesn't have access to the organization, so therefore by default all users will have access. Okay, and the way that you would do that is simply just change that from contains to doesn't contain. Okay, so in other words, if that users list on the organization does not have access to the user, then it will be in the list, otherwise it won't be. So we'll keep it like this for now because I think it's easier to explain. I would probably do it the other way generally, purely because it just makes it much easier when you're creating users that are all included by default. Depends which way you want to do it, just an alternative view. So on the user, let's have a look at the privacy rules that we want to apply on the user. So at the minute, with our default privacy rule, which is the user's own data, so this user is the current user, there's no harm in having that, but we also have to have a different rule as well to make sure that we implement the subscription. So we can define that, and we can say SAS Rule, and then we can do exactly the same thing, is that we can say that only the only users that are visible to the user that's in the system, again, is the users that have the same, that belong to the same subscription. So therefore, this user's subscription is current user's subscription. Okay, so therefore it's going to meet this, or it's going to meet this in order to be able to view that user record. Now what we could do here, because you've got these view all fields, is you could say, well, the user can view everything, they can view all their fields. Okay, but let's say that they don't match that, but they match this. In other words, it's not the current user, but it's another user belonging to the same subscription. Okay, so what you could then do is to say that you're going to limit the information depending on what fields that you've got to just those fields that you want them to see, but the user's own data, they can see everything, or maybe they can see everything if it's a user who is an admin. Again, we implemented that field, admins, specifically for, on the subscription, specifically for that purpose. So in terms of the subscription itself, we do need a privacy rule on there to make sure that just not everybody can get at the subscription information. And we want to do this, remember, to everyone else to switch that off. If you've got a public facing website or something, then that's where you would have this switched on. So what we can do there then is to say that this subscription is current users subscription. Okay, and don't forget that maybe only the information, only certain piece of information that you want applicable to the actual admin. So what you could do then is to have this rule in place and then a secondary rule that would say this subscription is a current user subscription, and the current subscriptions you admins contains the current user, and then you could have additional rules again. So let's say, for example, that okay, you meet the subscription, but you don't necessarily want all fields. So you may say, I don't want them to have access to the admins field, and then we'd have a separate rule for our admins to make sure that they could see that. So let's say that we then say SAS admin rule. Okay, and then we can duplicate this. So let's just copy that expression, paste it in. Okay, and then we can say, and this subscription's admins contains current user. Okay, and that way that they can basically see all fields. If it doesn't meet that rule, but it does meet this rule, then maybe you want to exclude the admins field or whatever it is that you want to do. Okay, so that's how we layer up our privacy rules. Okay, so let's go back to our schema now, and let's do business entity, for example. Now obviously there's lots of other subsidiary tables that we've got on there, so we can't implement it all until we do the rest of them. So what I will do then is I will create the types, and then we can sort of add the fields as we go. So, and again, I will zoom through this so that it's not a bore for you. Okay, so just simply create the type so that we can create the necessary fields. We've also got a couple of option sets that we're relying on. This one here, BE type. So let's create that. Okay, and we just had customer and supplier. Okay, and yep, I think we're good to go with that. So we've got name and type on our business entity. Name is a text. Okay, and type is going to be BE type, and we said it was going to be a list. Okay, and then next then we've got, obviously we've got the subscription and the org, they're standard part of every single data type in our system. Subscription and org. Okay, and then we've got our primary contact, which is obviously a type contact, and then we've got our main phone number contact point. Okay, we put CP in the schema. We'll probably leave that out here. Let's have a look. Main contact point, main phone number, sorry, main email and main web. Main email, which again is a contact point. Be nice if the scroll bar was a bit thicker. Contact point and main web. Oh, okay. That's quite new. That didn't used to do that, where you could just type a short key. Okay, contact point. I just thought I'd try it, and it's actually worked. Well, when did they introduce that, and how much time have I lost by not knowing about that? Okay, so we've got all of those types in there. So let's have a look at the address, which we again, we obviously need to link it back to a subscription. And then we need to link it back to a business entity so that we'll know which address it's actually related to which business entity this address is related to, I should say. Okay, and then we've got, I think that's it. Oh no, the actual address itself, obviously. Okay, and that will be text. Again, we could in the future add another field which is a geographic address, which is so that puts the actual location information that we can then map on a Google map, for example. Okay, and then we've got contact. Okay, and we need to just quickly add the subscription and the org, and then we have to link it to a business entity. Okay, and where are we? Then we've got first name, last name. Try and press through this as fast as I can. Okay, and primary phone, primary email, primary phone, that's going to be a contact point. Primary email. Okay, and primary web. Okay, and that's that one for there. So the only one is the contact point that we need to do. We'll leave the list type for next time, and therefore we're going to need an option set for CP type, which is phone number, email, web, Twitter, and you can add as many as you like in there. So let's create that option set, and this is contact point type, and let's just create a few options. And then in our contact point type, again, we're going to need to hook every single type up to a subscription and an org. And we then need a type. This is contact point type, so CP type, okay. And then we've got a description and info and a link to a business entity. So description allows the user to give each contact point a name, a text, and then the actual contact point info. So this will be where the actual telephone number or the email is actually stored. And finally we had a business entity. Okay, and okay, there we go. Right, so that's all of our types set up. Let's just create the privacy rules for one of them, which is our business entity. And again, this is quite straightforward. Again, we'll call it our SAS Rule. Okay, and then we can just say that this business entity's subscription is this business entity's subscription. Now, this is going to be slightly different because we also need to hook it up to the org. Okay, so in here we didn't, on the user we didn't need to do it, on the organization we didn't need to do it, but now on this one, remember that the user, okay, has a current org field set on it, and therefore when they log in, that current org has to be selected. They have to have a particular organization in use, even if there's just one. We have to hook it up to an organization. So not only is it going to be the part of the same subscription, it's also got to be part of the same org. So if we go back to our business entity, then we need to then say, and this business entity's org is current user's current org. Now, technically speaking, we don't actually need this first one. This business entity subscription is this business entity subscription. Sorry, that should read, sorry, is the current users, current users subscription. So technically speaking, we don't actually need this here because we can be guaranteed really that the org belongs to a subscription and that's already matched. However, for belt and braces, we are making sure that absolutely no other data is shown. And of course, we need to make sure that everyone else can't see this. Make sure that you do untick that. So what we can do now then, we need to apply this thing to every single other type. So what we can do is just to right click, copy the expression, go to our type and create a SAS rule for each type, and then we can just paste that expression in and it will automatically put the current type in there as well for us. Okay, let me just do it for one more and then I'll just do the rest off screen, shall we say, because you don't need to see me repeat the same process over and over again. Okay, so we just paste that in. Oops, what are we missing? Well, what haven't we done on contact? Let me see. On contact, we didn't put, oh, I didn't name it a subscription. Sorry, my bad. Okay, I was trying to rush through it. So let's see if that now works. Clear it. Okay, paste it. Nope, this contacts subscription. Okay, oh, there we go. Okay, he didn't pick it up because I changed the field name. Okay, and you know, these mistakes happen when you're trying to rush through things. Let's do this one as well, seeing as we're at it. Okay, and we're going to paste that in, and we're going to make sure that that is not selected in there. Okay, and I think we're done. Yeah, I think we're done at this point. Okay, so we've kind of put everything in that we had in our data schema. Now we need to move on to the actual list type, which we'll do in the next one. And we've gone quite long on that one. Listen, thanks for watching. Sorry if that was a little bit repetitive, but it's just the job that needs to be done while we're developing our app. So again, thanks for watching. I will see you in the next one. Take it easy.